Let's kick this off right with a word of prayer, if you'd bow your heads with me. Lord, I thank you for this day and this opportunity we have to take a look at your word and hear several different sermons about the life of one of these great men, David. Lord, I ask for strength and wisdom from the Spirit in guiding my words today, and I pray for open hearts for those people in the audience. Lord, just bless this time we have together, and I ask that we can make it as fruitful as possible. So, today we're going to take a look at what is probably the most popular biblical battle scene, and that is David and Goliath. We've all heard references to it, inside and outside the church, facing the giants and, taking things into your own hands. But today, I want to take a look, a little bit into the cultural, the historical, and these other sort of aspects of it that kind of get gleamed over. So we're going to run through this, and hopefully we can get some insight, and then we're going to take a look at just what it was about David that sets him apart. We heard in Mary's message that he's this unlikely hero, and it begs the question, what was it about him that things lined up and went right for him? And I think these two key things are faith and obedience. So keep those in the back of your mind, because when these two things sort of come together is when God starts to work in our lives. A little bit of background on the story right now. So we have Israelites and the Philistines in battle in the valley of Ehler. This is in Israel, about 17 to 20 miles away from Bethlehem, Jerusalem, that area. We have each of the two armies on separate hills with a valley in between them. We read now, I'm going to introduce you now to sort of our antagonist, Goliath, the bad guy. So, many of you know about Goliath, but hopefully we can take a little bit closer look at it and get to know him a little bit better. So, one of the biggest things that the writer of 1 Samuel 17 looks at is these stats on Goliath. He's kind of like, this is kind of like his baseball card. It's his, this is his rookie season, or it's not his rookie season, sorry. Goliath is the old vet, but we're going to take a look at some of the stats. So it says his height in this one on Bible Gateway kind of breaks it down a little bit better. It says he was over 9 feet tall. In the other text we read he was 6 cubits in a span. Now, the writer wasn't obviously looking forward, a few thousand years and thinking, what are these measurements going to mean then? He was writing it to these people. But a cubit, from what I've understood, is from the elbow to the tip of the fingers, roughly 18 to 22 inches. So depending on whose cubit you're using, the height varies a little bit. But the nice round number that I landed on was about 9 foot 9 inches tall. So he's a big dude. He'd have trouble standing in this room. And to give you a better grasp of, just how ready for battle this guy was, he's got a bronze helmet on. He's got a bronze chainmail coat that weighs 125 pounds. So this guy's carrying around a couple kindergartners with him when he's going into battle. Further, we read that he has bronze shoulder plates, a bronze javelin, and bronze greaves. The shaft of his spear was as thick as a weaver's beam. Now, this is the one thing that I can never track down to exactly find out how big a weaver's beam is, what to compare it to. But we're going to say about this big, something about the size of a baseball, softball. So this guy's got some mitts on him if he's carrying this thing. The tip on this spear also weighs roughly 15 to 17 pounds. So imagine being able to put that thing out at full arm's reach and do battle with it. It's just incredible to me. And to top all this off, he's got an armor bearer that walks in front of him just to carry his shield. So this thing's probably the size of a small house, and it takes a whole other human being just to carry it out there. And then when he's ready for battle, he'll pick it up. So keep this picture in your mind and think of, this is Goliath coming out. He comes out, he stands in the valley between the two armies, and he issues this single combat sort of decree, this challenge. If one of you can come out and challenge me, then the whole Philistine army will become your servants. But if I win, then all of Israel will serve the Philistines. And it's, sort of this defiance against Israel and against God. And it's the single combat idea is one that is known in this Arab world. We know that the Philistines are sea peoples that came into the region, and it's possible they brought that with them. But just try to wrap your mind around the psychological effect of this massive human being. Kind of this Hulk, like that picture that Mary showed, but covered in armor. He's ready for battle, and they say one-on-one. Winner takes all. This is it. So, as we read, we know that the Israelites are terrified of this man. So he comes here, and he issues this decree, this challenge to Israel, and defies them. So Israel's terrified, and in the background of this, the writer kind of flip-flops back and forth and gives us background on these different characters. Now I want to take a look at our protagonist, David. As Mary said, she kind of gave me the best backdrop I could have possibly had, for bringing you into what David was like. The picture was pretty good. David's probably not, a huge guy. We don't really know. He's a younger man. Probably 13 to 19, somewhere in that range. But he's the youngest of 8 sons. His father Jesse of Bethlehem, and we know that the 3 oldest are with Saul in this battle. So his 3 older brothers are already here. And this is actually why David is sent out to, he's sent out by his father to check on his brothers and see how they're doing. And so David shows up with this grain and some cheese and stuff for the commander of his brother's unit to find out, how are my brothers doing? Are they all still alive? What's this battle looking like? Is it just bloodshed? And he comes to find that this giant has been coming out for 40 days. And issuing this challenge, saying, somebody come take me on, one-on-one, let's get this thing over with, and we'll all go home. So David shows up, and he's just, I can't imagine having this such a courageous mindset to come in. He's a young man, he's tended sheep, but he comes in and he's thinking, why is nobody taking this guy out? He's the only one in the entire camp, he's probably the youngest person there, and he's sitting there saying, why is this guy here? He's defying the armies of the living God, and we're not doing anything about it, So he says, well, what do I get if I take this guy out? He's thinking, I'm going to get a pretty fatty reward here. And so, he hears these guys talking. These guys say, Saul promises no taxes for the household of the man who does this. He promises, wealth and riches beyond your wildest dreams, whatever you want to call it. And he also promises his wife in marriage. So you become the king's son-in-law. So a pretty solid package deal for taking out this guy. So David's naturally excited about this, but his brother Eliab, the oldest, Mary talked a little bit about him. He's just downright mad. The little brother's here, and he's talking some smack. He's saying, "What you just came here to watch the battle. You don't even gonna help. You're not gonna do anything. Just get out of here." So he jumps to this conclusion that David's this little guy, can't do anything about it, and he's just mad that he's there to begin with. So, in David's searching around after he gets scolded by his brother, word sort of travels about the camp, and Saul hears about it. And now Saul says, well, bring this guy to me. Saul knows David prior from his harp playing and other such things, like throwing a spear at his head. And they come and they meet in their camp, and David just flat out says, let no one be dismayed, for your servant will remove this guy from Israel. He'll remove the tormentor, and everything's going to be bueno. And Saul doesn't really question it. He just says, okay, let's get you some armor. And can you imagine Saul? We know that Saul, we have this picture of Saul as a pretty big dude. He's head and shoulders above everybody else in Israel. And David, can you imagine the look on David's face when he's sitting there and he's saying, I want to take this guy out? Saul doesn't even question it. Saul's just like, there's got to be some sort of fire in his eyes that's just telling Saul that, God is with this kid. David goes on to tell him, I've killed lions, I've killed bears, just defending my sheep, and this guy is defying, the living God, the God that I serve. And it's just wild to think that, David goes from, okay, God's protected me in this, in lions against bears, and now I'm going to go fight, the biggest, baddest dude on the face of the planet right now. And I have no military experience. So David tries on Saul's armor. He's unaccustomed to it. You know, Saul's a big guy, probably doesn't fit so well. And he decides to go without it. So we have this picture of David walking out there with his shepherd's staff, his sling, and a bag. He goes down, and I've actually got a rock. I didn't bring it up here, but I got to go to the Valley of Elah this summer and pick up a rock from the stream bed that David picked up these stones from, and it was just it was a wild experience. We didn't get to spend a whole lot of time there. Now it's sort of an agricultural place. They've got different things growing in the valley, but I had a scarf on, and so I tried my best at finding an uncircumcised Philistine and killing him. I didn't find the Philistine, but I killed a steel pipe, and so that was pretty sweet. Dr. Ehler's got a couple pictures of myself and Greg Barber doing our best David impersonation. But back to David picking up the stone. So David has got this peace of mind. He's walking out there, and we read that Goliath is coming sort of ever closer. You know, this giant is looming in the background. And David's got the peace of mind to sit down and be like, oh man, this is a pretty good stone. You want to take this one? I'll take like 4 more. So he picks up 5 stones. Meanwhile, Goliath, this monster with a house for a shield, is coming towards him. You know, just the peace that God must have given this, that David had is just, it's awe-inspiring to say the least, to think about this. And so we've got Goliath coming in, we've got Goliath, approaching, ready for battle, and as he gets closer, we read that he's just disgusted. He's angry that David has come out there. This is the best thing that Israel has got to offer, is this little boy with a slingshot. And Goliath says these famous words, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And he's just... So now we've got this massive human being, and he's in full-on Hulk mode. He's ready to lay it down. He's going to walk out there, and he's going to flick him in the head, and his neck's going to snap, and it's going to be over. Little does he know, he's coming into battle, and David starts swinging this sling. Can you imagine? I tried to imagine the sound of that happening. Everybody had to have been silent there. The whole Israel army just silent. All you hear is this sling whirring through the air. You just hear it. And Goliath moves closer to attack, and David quickly ran out to meet him. So not only does he just stand there and be like, oh, this is a big guy, come here. He's ready for battle. David charges as well. And Goliath is probably surprised. And we noted that Goliath wore a bronze helmet, which would have covered his head and probably his face. So my take on this is that all of this is happening so fast. They're coming at each other. Goliath doesn't even think he probably needs to flip down the visor on his helmet. He just rolls out there, and David lets go of the stone. The stone flies, and we read it sinks into his forehead, and Goliath dies. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be there. It's just that I get so excited trying to think about, what was this battle like? And then I think about what was going through the armor bearer's head, the guy carrying the shield. He's thinking, I'm carrying a shield for the baddest dude on the face of the earth, and a teenager just took him out with a rock. He's like, this sucks. Probably just takes off. And so we read that David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. So David goes over there, pulls out Goliath's own sword, chops off his head. And if the Philistines aren't already running, then this is kind of the clincher. They see this crazy teenage kid run over there, hack off their champion's head, and he's carrying it around now. We read later that the sword of Goliath goes to a temple to Yahweh, and his armor goes to David's own tent. But David carries this head around for quite a while. So David's running around, Philistines are driven back, David's running around carrying a severed head that's probably the size of like the biggest watermelon you've ever seen. Running around, partying around the Philistine or the Israelite camp, and Saul's like, go out and find out whose son this is. Now this is sort of an interesting thing. I was kind of like, why does he ask the commander of his army who this son is? This guy's played the harp for him. He knows and has trusted David. David's his armor bearer. But this I believe, plays back to the reward that Saul promised of the household of whoever kills this man being free from taxes in Israel. And in order for Saul to, free somebody from taxes, he's got to know who they are. So he goes and he says, Abner, dude, find out who this kid is, who his dad is, and I want to see him. So he brings him in, and David returns from killing Goliath. Abner brought him to Saul with the Philistine's head still in his hand. And he says, who are you? He says, he is Jesse. He says, I'm Jesse, the son of your servant. I'm David, the son of your servant, Jesse of Bethlehem. That's all he says. And that's really all he has to say, because he's carrying the giant head around. And he's like, yeah, Jesse's my dad. He lives in Bethlehem. That's all. And so the story ends, but what I think we need to come back to is this idea of faith and obedience. David points out that several times, this is the army of the living God. This is God's chosen people, and, He's going to carry us in. And so David goes first in faith, but he's also obedient, because faith without works is dead. We read that in the New Testament. But when these two things sort of line up, it's just sort of this, this secret key that unlocks this door. When faith and obedience line up is when God begins to be able to work in our lives. And so my challenge to you is to not only be faithful in your walk with God, but also be obedient to what He's asking. And when these two things line up is, sort of the culmination of our faith, is when God really begins to work through us and in us, for His greater good.
Yeah.